I am so excited to stand before you today because I have the privilege, the honor, and the pleasure of serving under your Solicitor General, Sherry Boston. It has been my extreme pleasure to serve under her for the last 2 years and to see all of the wonderful things that she is doing, not only here in the solicitor's office as we prosecute cases, but everything that she is doing beyond the walls of that office to reach out to the community to ensure that we are hearing your issues, hearing your problems, and trying to find real solutions to everything that we do as we serve you. So will you all please give a huge round of applause as we welcome my boss, your Solicitor General, Sherry Boston.
Good morning. And welcome on this very beautiful but cold morning. I think we've officially entered fall, but I'm so glad to see so many of you here, and the response to this event once again has been really overwhelming. Thank you for coming to Building Bridges, Making Connections, coordinating a community response to domestic violence. Which is exactly what we want to do, and we hope by the time we're finished with you at 12:30 today that you are going to have all the knowledge and information that you need to go back out in the community and help us solve the problem of domestic violence. I want to recognize a few people that are here this morning. We have some elected officials that are here, and I appreciate their taking time out to show their support for this cause. We have Ernest Coach Williams from the representative from our House, District 87 right here. Thank you so much. Coach is always a great supporter, and we thank you so much for that. And we also have this morning our CEO, Lee May, who I'm going to ask to come up and give us greetings. And I'd like to thank the CEO's office for their support of our event and for making it possible for this event to be streamed live on DCTV so that we are reaching every bit of the county. So thank you so much.
Well, I am just ecstatic that we have such a phenomenal Solicitor General that has the vision to identify and address the pressing issues of our community. You know, it's one thing to be a prosecutor, to be strong on crime, to make sure that we're locking up the bad people. But it's another thing to connect your heart to your work and working on solutions on how to eradicate, prevent such issues as domestic violence. And so I'm thankful that you have a strong fist, but you have a warm heart that also understands that that it really does take a collaborative effort to address this just heinous issue as domestic violence, which has plagued not just our county, our state, but our nation as well. So I'm thankful to have our Solicitor General, Sherry Boston, as a friend, as a supporter, and I'm thankful that I can vote for her each and every election to be our Solicitor General here in DeKalb County. And as Sherry mentioned, this is being taped live, but it will also play over and over again as well, because we want to make sure that we're sharing this message with the community, sharing the information as well, that people can be empowered to do something about this horrible, horrible act. So thank you all. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being a partner in solving this issue as a whole, and thank you for being here in DeKalb County. God bless you.
Well, I want to start by thanking some folks that are making today possible. And first, I want to thank our major sponsor, Verizon Wireless, for co-sponsoring this event for a second year in a row and supporting us in this very important cause through the Hope Line program that turns no longer used cell phones into support for domestic violence victims. We have a collection box for used cell phones for Hope Line at the entrance of the auditorium. We've also been collecting over the month used cell phones, and we'll still continue to collect those in the solicitor's office and also at Caverna Coffee Shop in downtown Oakhurst. So continue to spread the message. If you forgot to bring your used phones today, you can still drop those off at those 2 locations through Monday. So we are taking those phones, and they go to a great cause. And we'd like to thank those of you that have already donated. During this National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we want to honor victims, survivors, and all those who've been impacted by domestic violence, while looking for real solutions to this very serious problem. My office alone processes more than 3,000 cases of misdemeanor domestic violence every year. Those cases involve women, men, children, and the elderly in every possible demographic and in every possible situation. Unfortunately, this problem is increasing. Last year, DeKalb County had the most deaths in the state due to domestic violence. 11 people were killed in DeKalb in domestic violence cases in 2012, up from 7 deaths in 2011 and 5 deaths in 2010. Across Georgia, 128 people died in 2012 due to domestic violence. And the Georgia Domestic Violence Fatality Review found that 86% of those homicides, the perpetrator had a history of domestic violence against that victim. That means many of these homicides could have been prevented if someone had intervened, if the victim had been able to get help before it was too late. My goal as your Solicitor General is to stop misdemeanor domestic violence before it escalates into more serious cases and before it escalates to death. Georgia recently ranked 12th in the nation for the number of women killed by men. And the Violence Policy Center also found that women almost always know the person who kills them. Sadly, children are often witnesses to this violence, victims themselves, and are taught that this type of behavior is normal. We must break the cycle of abuse that is often passed down from generation to generation. As we look for solutions today, we are glad to be joined by all of you in the community, by so many professionals who have dedicated their careers to fighting domestic violence, and survivors who have started their lives over. They can truly be an inspiration to us all. Before we get started, I want to thank our resource fair participants, because it is their valuable connection and partnership in the community, as well as their willingness to come here and continue to share the good works that they do, that make a day like this so successful. So I'd like to recognize those people now. Today in our resource fair, we have Men Stopping Violence, the Georgia Asylum and Immigration Network, International Women's House, the Georgia Commission on Family Violence, the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office, a Hensma House, Latin American Association, Tapestry, Raksha, the Still Standing Foundation, the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office of their DV unit, the DeKalb Police Department's SVU unit, Caminar Latino, the Beverly Cunningham Outreach Program, the Georgia Crime Victims Compensation Program, and of course, the DeKalb County Solicitor's Office. So please, let's give them a warm round of applause. And I want to let you know, they're not just here to give information. If there's someone in this room that needs help or needs to get help for someone else, all these tables can be a resource. And what I'd like to do also is, if you are a victim advocate, no matter what office you work for, if you are here in an advocate position, please raise your hand. Wonderful. All of these people that are raising their hands are advocates, and that means that you can go to them if you need someone to talk to. So there is no reason that anyone should walk out of this room today without having the opportunity to reach out and speak to someone if you need help. And that's what we'd like to do today. So I would like to start our program by introducing Jenny Osmond, the Fatality Review Project Coordinator for the Georgia Commission on Family Violence, where she provides technical assistance to fatality review teams across the state and co-authors the Fatality Review Project's annual report. Jenny holds a Master of Social Work and Bachelor of Art in Women's Studies from the University of Georgia, and she will explain to us how each of us can make a difference in this fight against domestic violence through a coordinated community response.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Jenny Osmond. I'm the Fatality Review Project Coordinator for the Georgia Commission on Family Violence. The Georgia Commission on Family Violence was created in 1992 by the Georgia General Assembly to develop a comprehensive state plan for ending family violence in Georgia. With 5 staff members and 37 commission members, our agency works with communities and systems across the state to provide leadership in strengthening Georgia's families by ending family violence. And we accomplish our mission and goals through several different projects and initiatives, which include evaluating and monitoring the adequacy and effectiveness of current family violence law, initiating and coordinating the development of new family violence legislation, making recommendations for education and training for a variety of systems, developing models for and providing support for community task forces on family violence, developing standards and certifying the family violence intervention programs across the state. We also host an annual 2-day statewide conference, and we coordinate the Georgia Domestic Violence Fatality Review Project in partnership with the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I've been asked to speak with you all here today about what a coordinated community response is and why it's so important. As the Fatality Review Project Coordinator for the Commission, I know firsthand how important a coordinated community response to domestic violence is because I see what happens when it's not working in a community. Victims fall through the cracks and perpetrators are not held accountable for their actions. In the 100-plus cases reviewed by the Fatality Review Project in the past 10 years, the gaps in service delivery that we identified through the fatality review process that existed in the lives of the victim and perpetrator can be addressed through a coordinated community response. So in short, we see a coordinated community response to domestic violence as something that can prevent future homicides from happening. So what exactly is a coordinated community response to domestic violence? It's an intervention strategy for family violence that consists of government agencies, community-based agencies, survivors of family violence, professionals, and concerned community members coming together through a network, a system of networks, agreements, processes, and applied principles to increase victim safety and offender accountability. A coordinated community response is not the sole responsibility of the domestic violence service providers in our community, but of the whole community. The core philosophy of a coordinated community response to domestic violence is that domestic violence is a community issue and requires the entire community to address the issue. It is rooted in the belief that when different members of the community coordinate their efforts to protect battered women and hold perpetrators accountable, our efforts are more successful. And the coordination of services and responses helps to ensure that the system works faster and better for victims, that victims are protected and receive the services that they need, and that batterers are held accountable and cease their abusive behavior. A coordinated community response is a vital process for a community that's interested in ending domestic violence because it enables communities to do the following: to develop individualized responses that consider the diversity of victims' experiences and the particular needs of the community, to promote consistency and collaboration among response systems, to establish agency accountability for coordinated and effective intervention, to assist in the development of a shared vision for reducing violence against women, and to create formal and informal networks for communication and collaboration across systems. In Georgia, a coordinated community response takes many different forms, such as events like today, where agencies are learning about what each other is doing, they're coordinating, they're developing relationships, and the public is learning more about what services are available for those in need. But it is most exemplified through our family violence task forces across the state. The Georgia Commission on Family Violence is charged with coordinating and establishing a community task force on family violence in each judicial circuit in the state. We provide these task forces with support, technical assistance, guidance, and training as they work to strengthen their local community response to domestic violence. And the goals of family violence task forces generally include facilitating community education, identifying multidisciplinary training opportunities, coordinating public awareness and legislative education, identifying gaps in services, and building resources for victims. In order for task forces to have a successful coordinated community response, they must have participation from those in the community who interact with both victims and perpetrators of domestic violence. This includes representatives from the judicial system, prosecution, law enforcement, probation, family violence intervention programs, the Department of Family and Children Services, faith-based organizations, mental health, alcohol, and drug counseling providers, child care providers in the school system, sexual assault and child advocacy centers, legal service providers, veterinarians and animal control agencies, the medical community, military service personnel, and concerned citizens from all walks of life. So as you can see, everybody here in this room has a role that they can play in becoming a part of a coordinated community response to domestic violence. In December 2012, the Commission completed an 18-month process of developing a state plan for ending family violence in Georgia. With the assistance of over 20 statewide partners and collaborating agencies, we created a plan with an extensive array of long-range prevention, early intervention, crisis, and legal service recommendations for ending family violence in Georgia. This plan is not just a plan for our agency, but it's a plan for the entire state of Georgia for anyone who wants to play an active role in ending family violence in Georgia. Each agency working on family violence is encouraged to use the plan to guide its own priorities, setting strategies that fall within its own statutory mission. The goals, objectives, and steps towards change included in the state plan can also be used to assist in the development of new programs and to achieve grant funding for those programs. I have a state plan here. This is what it looks like. We're out today, but it's available on our website, www.gcfv.org, if you'd like to download it and take a look at it. One of the goals included in the state plan is to improve Georgia's coordinated community response to domestic violence. Specifically, the plan recommends an increase in cross-training between systems, an increase in public education about local resources and support, and a consistent local response to intimate personal violence, dating violence, and children exposed to domestic violence. Achieving a coordinated community response to domestic violence can be challenging, and it does take a lot of work. There's a lot of different agencies that need to be a part of it, and getting them together on a regular basis can be really hard. But it is possible, and it is happening all across our state, including here in DeKalb County. If you're interested in being a part of the local Family Violence Task Force here, I encourage you to reach out to your new chairs, Chastity Rogers or Jennifer Waindell, or you can contact me after the program for more information. Creating and supporting a coordinated community response to domestic violence is a guiding principle in all of the work and responsibilities at the Georgia Commission on Family Violence. We believe that every segment of the community is responsible for helping to end family violence in Georgia. Everyone here today can be a part of the solution. You're an integral part of developing and maintaining a coordinated community response to domestic violence, ensuring victims do not fall through the cracks and that perpetrators are held accountable for their violence. Thank you for being here today.
Next, we have a video presentation, and it's called Healing the Cracks. And let me introduce Asher Burke, who's going to introduce this video. Asher is a legal advocate with the Women's Resource Center to End Domestic Violence and a monitor with Nia's Place, a supervised visitation center. And let me tell you, it's the only supervised visitation center here in the state of Georgia, and it's located right here in DeKalb County. Mr. Burke graduated from Guilford College with a Bachelor of Science in Business Management and minors in Criminal Justice and Marketing. He interned with Men Stopping Violence and worked at the Georgia Commission on Family Violence before joining the Women's Resource Center. And he will speak to you today about the dynamics of domestic violence.
Hello. Before I speak, as Sherry mentioned, we're going to show a video. This video was put together ahead of our fundraiser we do every year called Champions for Change, the luncheon. And so it really captures the stories of some of the women that we've assisted over the years, as well as provides an overview of our philosophy and services. And I can speak a little bit more to that after the video. So thank you.
The week before our wedding, I didn't even know what started the fight. I guess I said something, and the next thing I know, he's got me by the throat, pinned against the wall, literally choking me to death. Pretty much from that point forward, it was just the cycle of being fine and then not being fine. I'm not this person that has been abused. That's not me. I always said that would never be me, and it's me. I knew at that moment I could do the circle again, or I could just say, you know what, it's enough. Enough is enough, and I'm done. And I grabbed the kids, and I just left. We're going. We are going. I called 511. They gave me 2 numbers to call. The first place was full, and that was the end of the story. And the second number I called was Women's Resource Center, and Miss Claudine picked up the phone. And that day, my life changed. It was like I knew I made the right decision because everything became easy. It was no longer hard to live every day.
It's a refuge. It's a place where women come to so that they can shift from power over themselves to power within themselves. And they do that in a community where people support each other. They work on shifting the experience because when you come to the safe house, you often think about things like, gosh, I really don't want to have to be in an experience like this. It feels like a low point. It feels like I never in my life imagined that I wanted to grow up and be in a place like this, but here I am, so now what?
I didn't know what I was going into. So I wouldn't say that I was scared. When I got there, I was scared because I saw the light on.
Once she actually gets in the door, the first thing we want to do is help her get settled in her room and then ask her if she wants to eat, if she wants a little time to take a nap, just to kind of get settled in because it can be really overwhelming to come into the safe house because it's a new and strange and unfamiliar place. But once a woman gets there, she settles in pretty quickly. The other women come to welcome her. They help show her around. They might offer her something to eat. At the Safe House, we have the kitchen, which is sort of like the hub of the house. There's a large island in the kitchen with 8 eyes, and so everyone can get around the island. There's lots of space for kind of chopping and prepping and stirring. Then there's a dining room area where everyone kind of gathers together for dinner each evening. And then we have a courtyard in the middle of the house, and the flowers are just beautiful. There are roses there. And there's a tree that I don't care what I say, I can't keep the kids out of. We have a patio that overlooks the children's play area, so moms can sit there and enjoy the sunshine and look out on the trees, and at the same time see the children playing on the tire swing that we have out there in the jungle gym. It really is a transformation, just watching people move along the space that they really want to sort of, navigate their own path. Being at the Safe House creates a real opportunity to have a meaningful second chance or a new opportunity to create safety where previously there wasn't any. And so imagine how wonderful it is when you take this tremendous blind leap of faith and you land someplace really beautiful. And that's really what we work for. We want women to come into this space and think, yes, I made the right choice.
He would call back to back hundreds of times a day. He would call my job trying to talk to. I'd have to unplug my phone just to get work done. It was so bad that I did file a TPO through the help of the Women's Resource Center.
My name is Ayanna Johnson. I'm Director of Legal Services for the Women's Resource Center to End Domestic Violence. The legal program is vital because what we do is walk with women through the complexities of the court system. Our role is to be intercessories between her wishes and the court system, and even to convey what it is that she wants and needs to the abuser. We assist with the family violence temporary protective order process, as well as assisting women with applying for criminal arrest warrants.
Actually, my married life was 10 years, and I used to stay at home all the time as a housewife. But my husband, from day one, he's like giving me mental torture and abused me.
We have a strong collaboration with the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department, the DeKalb County Police Department as well, and their domestic violence unit. We've got a voice before our judges, and when we meet with advocates across the state and even across the country, I'm told that what we have is very unique. It's very rare, and we're really grateful. I can't imagine a woman having to navigate the complexities of the legal system. It's daunting. There's so many steps to that process, and what we try to do is to inhibit some of the re-victimization that takes place.
One day I call Women's Resource Center and talk to them and find a lawyer and talk to my lawyer. Lawyer accepted my case and getting mental support, legal option, legal advice. From that day, I get a new life and I get back my hope. And I'm so lucky.
We're going to listen, we're going to be authentic, we're going to respect her autonomy and primarily allow her words to be her words. We'll explain the process to her and explain that we're not saviors and we're not to stand in her place, but we will certainly be there with her every step of the way. She doesn't have to do it alone.
My husband at the time had a psychotic break. We sought out treatment for him. He was hospitalized and then was in a partial day treatment program. He told me that he had shared with the psychologist that he had not only suicidal thoughts but homicidal thoughts. I really, really felt scared that unless I monitored how his illness was, that my kids wouldn't be safe, that the court wouldn't believe that he was a danger to them.
My name is Asher Burke. I'm a legal advocate and also a supervised visitation monitor at Nia's Place. Nia's Place is a supervised visitation and safe exchange center. It provides a safe environment for children to visit with a non-custodial parent or abusive parent with some structure and some boundaries contained in there that don't exist elsewhere. What happens during a visit at Nia's Place is the children are brought back by the escort who takes them from the custodial parent to meet the non-custodial parent in one one of the visitation rooms. So it's all about having a good, healthy time with your kids. Fortunately, we have a nice space that feels and looks like a house. And so one room's like probably what was the great room or a big room in a house. And there's toys lining above the shelf on the mantle. And toys all around, play sets, a little table and chairs, a little train set so people could build, different train tracks and play with the trains. And I think that, there's activities for parents to do with their children in there that are age appropriate. We have another space where there's a lot of board games and puzzles, things like that. And then we have a third room for visiting with a television and some video games and things like that. A lot of the teenage kids that visit with us, they like to be in that room. They can talk while they're playing, so it's sort of like the playing sort of an impetus for a larger conversation.
The fact that Nee's Place existed and that there was the idea that my kids could still have a relationship with him, but that it would be in a safe environment and a supervised environment, that really opened up the door for me to be able to begin to consider new possibilities for myself and for my daughters.
We're all coming from the same place, so to speak. We might have gotten here differently, but our journey at that moment is kind of the same. You got a diaspora of people on the spectrum. So you had people ending, and you had people beginning, and you had people in the middle. It was hard for me to leave, I'll be honest. I waited till 3 o'clock, got my kids, we got in the car. Finding a place was really difficult, and when I found the place, it was close to my son's school. I said, this is perfect. And we pulled up, and we're home.
I felt sad when I have to leave because all my friends, I was gonna miss them, and it was gonna be hard for me. I'm happy living with my 2 lovable sisters and my mom, who takes really good care of me.
It's important for men to be involved in this work because we are both the cause of, and I believe, the solution to ending violence against women. I have a sister, I have a mother, and I think that any of us who have women in our lives, it's in our best interest to make sure the world is safe for them.
Care about the Women's Resource Center because we're not just a domestic violence agency, we're human rights activists, and we need your help.
I was determined that I had to remove myself from it, and I made a lot of sacrifice. A lot of sacrifice. Leaving my kids behind was hard. But I know one day that they'll understand why Mommy had to make that decision. And because I know they think that I turned my back on them, but I didn't. I was in a situation where it was either Mommy was gonna live or Mommy was not going to.
It's not really just about giving money. It's not just about making the gift. It's about the impact of the gift. I mean, what the gift does.
To come home to a place where my children can be children and not feel terrorized and scared is a wonderful feeling for them and for me. And I could not ask for anything more than that, than a family being a true family, because that's what we are now.
Again, my name is Asher Burke, and for what wasn't readily apparent in the video there, tell you a little bit more about Women's Resource Center. We've been around since 1986. We started with a $10,000 grant from DeKalb County. We have a 32-bed safe house, community office, and a supervised visitation center. We provide legal services. We don't have lawyers on staff. We do have 2 legal advocates, and we have a legal clinic on Tuesday nights for women to come get advice about issues pertaining to divorce or any other civil matter that may be going on in their situation. We answer over 10,000 crisis calls a year at Women's Resource Center. And you may not know that our community office is located less than a mile away from here. So if you know anybody who's dealing with domestic violence or is just looking for somewhere to go where they can get options without being steered in a certain direction. We're not rescuers. We really try to do a really good job of listening and helping people understand, as it said in the video, the complexities of the legal system or how to navigate their situation with resources that are available to them. I'm going to talk about the dynamics of domestic violence, but I'm going to do it a little differently than I might normally do it. And I did it by describing my personal experience working with women and sort of what changed for me when I was working for the state as the Family Violence Intervention Program Monitor, where I went around and made sure that programs were in compliance with state regulations, working with abusers, to actually sitting face-to-face with women day in and day out and hearing their realities and their experiences. Often I'm troubled when I'm asked to speak about the dynamics of domestic violence. When I worked for the state, I was never troubled. And many of you may have seen this power and control wheel. It's got the different aspects of domestic violence: financial abuse, economic abuse, using the children, things that women have to navigate that were shared experiences. But to me, at that point in my life doing this work, it was more of a list of things, a list of practical things as to why a woman might stay in an abusive relationship or why a man might choose to use violence in his relationship. That all changed for me when I began working at Women's Resource Center. After listening to woman after woman tell her story and assisting them with options, I realized situations had a lot in common with every relationship I've ever been in or been around. It often seems to come down to expectations, life experience, fear, vulnerability, and investment. This is not to ignore the impacts of what are termed as intersections of oppression: race, class, gender, immigration status, sexual identity. Those things are all around us all the time and have an impact on resources available to us or how we view our situation. But when I'm talking to a woman about her intimate relationship, that's often not right there in the forefront of the conversation. It's much more about what's happening at that moment, and she's not necessarily thinking about all these macro level issues that we talk about that are there and real. In order to talk with women who are experiencing domestic violence, I found I had to speak about the issue differently. It required me to change my thinking around the dynamics of domestic violence. He was not the abuser or perpetrator anymore. He was John or Steve, a very real, dynamic person who she loved. She's not a victim, but a woman struggling to find answers in a difficult situation. In many cases, the person I'm talking to doesn't want the relationship to end. She's still trying to help him see the impact of his action, fix whatever issue he's blaming his behavior on. I'm just waiting to get that job. I'm waiting for my big break. I've got a problem with alcohol. And all those things can impact or exacerbate a situation, but they're not the cause of it. In cases where children are involved, there's often great pressure put on mothers to stay in a relationship simply because it's widely believed children need their father, even in spite of his abuse. And I think sometimes the connection isn't quite there with children overhearing or witnessing abuse because they're not being actually physically assaulted by the person. And I know a lot of community members put pressure on mothers. There's too many single mothers raising children, and you need to have this father present. The person who she loves that is hurting her also makes promise after promise to change. And I've often heard from people that there's no greater evil in this world than false hope. And I think that's often what the abuser's giving her. It's right around the corner. Here comes change. He makes his actions, or makes her believe his actions are purely cause and effect. If you didn't do this, then I wouldn't do that. Tying her behavior into his, as if it's one thing. This presents a unique challenge, as the person she loves presents as both the cause of her pain and the hope for a better, less painful future. For many women, because their actions are not motivated by a need to dominate and control their partner, trying to understand him becomes almost an impossible task. It's very difficult to process the fact that a person is doing something who says they love you intentionally to control you. I once overheard one of my coworkers say to a woman, "If helping him is hurting you, then there's a problem." I've always held on to that statement, both as a reminder to never ask for more than I'm willing to give in my own relationship, but also as a reminder to women who are struggling with the decision to leave an abusive situation. And I think it also serves as a reminder that sometimes when you've been hurt, it's important to set boundaries around communication. Trying to reason with or being vulnerable with someone who does not have your interests at heart can be a very painful experience and cause one to question oneself. An advocate I work with, Kim Frendak, once said simply, "Domestic violence is confusing." And it is. Kim has also been capturing the stories of women by writing them down from their perspective. They're beautifully written and give us some insight into the dynamics of domestic violence that we may not always pick up on, but are women's reality. I'd like to share one of those stories with you now. It's called "He is My Father and I Love Him." The Chinese woman looks so small sitting in the padded chair, and she looks so young. She had a nervous smile on her face and rope burns on her neck. She did not understand a word of the multiple conversations that were happening around her. A teenage girl that I soon would know to be her daughter, Nikki. She stood silent, straight, and sullen. They came to Atlanta 3 years prior. Son, her husband, and Nikki. Son's husband did not allow her to do anything outside of her womanly duties, as he defined them. Nikki, who had been attending a local public school since their move, learned to speak English very well. The police officer who brought them to our center explained that when he went to the residence in response to the 911 call, he found only Son and Nikki at home. The officer knew that Nikki was the one who called 911, and she told the dispatcher she was afraid her father would kill her mother. I looked into Son's hopeful eyes and tried to communicate with mine that I cared about her suffering. Then I made an assumption. And by the way, because of this assumption, "Don't make assumptions" is on my personal list now. Looking to 16-year-old Nikki to translate my words, I began to explain that with an order of protection, her father would have to stay away from them. In the house as well. I explained to Nikki that if her father is afraid of going to jail, then an order of protection would have a pretty good chance of keeping them safe if he was afraid to violate the order. And it would help them feel safer if they went ahead and did that. I asked Nikki to talk to her mother about the protective order. And I said to Nikki, "Don't worry, with the protective order, if your father tries to come near your mother or the house, he's going to jail." Now about that assumption, Nikki burst into tears of helplessness and said, "He's my father and I love him. he won't have anywhere to go. I very wrongly assumed that just because this child called 911 to save her mother, and she clearly loved her mother very much, that she would be just fine banishing her father to who knows where for who knows how long. If we are not careful, it is easy to be blind to the complexities that are part of this nightmare that we call domestic violence. Working out of my blind assumption, I hurt a child who had already been hurt quite enough. We called one of our board members, who happened to be fluent in Mandarin, and she translated. My son spoke with our staff legal advocate. Son and Nikki had a long stay in our safe house. Son got a TPO that kept her husband away from her, but she did not ask the judge to order him to leave the residence. Of course, this was just the beginning of a very long road for Son, but she did not have to walk it alone. So as you sit with that story, think about a complicated relationship in your own life. How do your own feelings about that relationship differ from feedback you get from others in your life, friends and family? Have you ever ignored something wrong for the sake of a relationship? What did that experience teach you about yourself? And those are questions just to hold and to consider. The reality is that human relationships are complicated, and no matter how much you distill it down, true understanding requires stepping outside of yourself. It is not fair to judge someone for what you think they should have done. If we operated in a vacuum, it would be very easy. Someone hurt me, so I'm not going to be around them. But this kind of thinking ignores all the moving parts and complexities. It's like showing up to a movie 45 minutes late and writing a full negative review based only on what you've seen. This brings me to the idea of investment. I think it's a universal truth that no one wants a 0% return on an investment. A relationship is a form of an investment in a person, in a shared vision. I'm going to read another story now from the perspective of a woman. It's called "He Knows How I Feel About That." Kayla's 19. She held her beautiful little boy who wiggled on her lap as she spoke with me. I need to go because my boyfriend's out of control. I just want to go to Michigan because I have 5 aunties there. They want us to come. My baby's father, me and him have been together since high school, and we've been through a lot, but now I have to go. This time he held a gun to me. He pulled it out, cocked it back, and held it to my head. He's troubled too. He's on felony probation for hitting someone with a pipe. And I've been shot before at school last year, and he knows how I feel about that. She cried. I asked her to tell me about her tears. She told me that she still loves him and that leaving him is the hardest thing she's ever going to have to do. I told her that it made sense that she loves him and that she could take that love with her, knowing that for now she's probably doing the best thing for her and her child because he's just not ready for a healthy relationship. Then I said, love is not enough. She sat straight up at me, wide-eyed, as if I had said the most profound thing ever, and exclaimed in disbelief, my auntie told me that, but nobody ever told me that before. I always thought that we're supposed to be with the person that we love. I thought that being in love was the only thing that really mattered. I asked her where she learned that. After some contemplation, she said, I guess in songs. She came to the conclusion on her own that perhaps she should not always believe in lyrics. So broken-hearted Kayla and baby Justice boarded the bus to Detroit, and aunties Marcia, Millie, Mary Ann, Maggie, and May. She's going to be okay. Again, some things to think about. I want you all to think about a major life decision that you've struggled with. Think about what happens when we are invested in an idea or a person. If you were told that your absolute favorite person, and that could be an actor, a musician, a public figure, a pastor at a church, and someone told you this person did something terrible to their partner, would you be able to just walk away from them, put them away, throw away all their CDs, never look back? And a reminder, is this person somebody you've spent a lot of time and energy on, whether it's just emotional relief from listening to their music or, the kind words from the pulpit? Would you believe the person that told you what they did? Would you immediately believe them? What about a business venture you worked so hard to achieve? The business hasn't been profitable for years. Would you just be able to walk away? The head and heart can be miles apart. We can know something is not good for us, but we will ignore the bad sometimes if we think the good parts are worth it and our hearts are invested in it. In terms of life decisions, think about changing careers or going back to school. You have to think about and weigh the totality of your circumstances before embarking. You may seek feedback from friends and family about the upcoming decision. You may get a lot of different feedback that confuses you. Even if you know your current job's reached a dead end, you may have barriers to making a change. What are the prospects out there? Will I be able to support myself financially? Will I like my new coworkers? What about going back to school? Can I afford it? Will I be able to balance school and work? And the reason I'm posing all these questions is because I think the critical thinking involved in making any major decision in your life is exactly what a victim of domestic violence is going through when she's trying to decide to leave a relationship. Decisions can be difficult to make under normal circumstances. Imagine if you were dealing with violence, trauma, and verbal abuse on top of that. Combine that with the mixed signals you may be getting from your partner about a willingness to change, or that it's your fault that the abuse is happening, or the mixed advice you get from friends and family based on their personal experiences. It takes time to figure things out. It takes time to process one situation, and patience is required. One rule I've always lived by as an advocate is that it's easy to give advice when you don't have to live with the consequences. And that's something I always remind myself of when I am advocating. There's been many occasions where I really thought I had a good idea, and I presented it not really considering the totality of someone's circumstances. Understanding the dynamics of relationships and domestic violence is what is required of a great advocate. You must always check yourself and remember that learning and understanding are two-way streets. Some of my best teachers are the women who come in for services at Women's Resource Center. Expertise is an illusion when it comes to human beings. I believe everyone in this room can support the work of ending violence against women. Our colleagues at Men Stopping Violence have always said, "We are the work," and it's true. It takes dedication to self-work and a real understanding of self to be a successful advocate. We must not hold people to our ideal of what a relationship is and what decisions we would have made if we were in the shoes of the person in front of us. We don't know what is best, and when we assume we do, people get injured emotionally or may not come back for help. Give people meaningful referrals and listen more than you talk. Make sure if you're giving them information, it's correct and not simply your experience with the court system or, a personal anecdote, although those can be helpful for emotional support. And walk with them, not in place of them. And finally, let them know the door is open and they will not be judged. Thank you very much.